Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Celtic Way. I am your host, John McGinley. I'm joined by Ryan McGinley. We're here to chat through all sorts of Celtic news and views over the next half an hour or so. Thanks to everyone joining the live chat at the moment. We'll get to your comments as and when we can throughout the show. A fair amount to chat about today, Ryan. Obviously, the Scottish Premiership season is closing in. I think first off, we'll start with a Champions League playoff update. Now, the second qualifying round concluded on Wednesday night, and that means the teams that Celtic could be drawn against were whittled down to 8 overnight. If you've missed this, you might have caught this last night, but we had it up on the website. But essentially, the playoff draw is on Monday. Celtic can be drawn against 5 unseeded teams. 2 of them are already qualified and for the playoff round, and 6 of them will play each other to make it to the qualifying round. So I'm going to throw up the teams here so you have a better idea of what it is, if I didn't explain it well enough there. So essentially, Celtic can be drawn against Basel of Switzerland. They can be drawn against Sturm Graz of Austria. They can be drawn against either Paphos of Cyprus or Dynamo Kiev of Ukraine. And then they can be drawn against either Slovan Bratislava of Slovakia and Kairat of Kazakhstan. And Karabag of Azerbaijan or Skandia of Armenia are the other team that Celtic could face. Now, Ryan, what do you make of this? It'll be one of these 5 bits of paper that are drawn out against Celtic on Monday. And then we might have to wait a little bit to find out exactly who Celtic will be playing. But again, it could be Basel or Sturm Graz. What's the danger team there jumping out at you as one to potentially avoid?
I would look at the teams that were in the Champions League last season, and Sturm Graz immediately stand out. I know maybe they've not had as good a season, or they're maybe not as good as what they were a couple of years ago, but they were in the Champions League phase last season. Slovan Bratislava were as well, although Celtic disposed of them pretty easily on match day 1. I don't think there's any easy draws there. The teams that get to this stage of the competition, get to this qualifying round, deserve to be there on merit. But I think if you're looking to avoid any teams, you would look at the likes of Basel, who are an established side who have always got good players coming through historically. A couple of familiar faces as well in that team. I believe Albion Ajeti is still there at Basel at the moment. But yeah, no easy draws. It's just, I guess it's now the waiting game until Monday to see who Celtic can face. If they get one of those teams, one of those 2 teams, they'll be keeping a keen eye on whatever happens in that third qualifying round match. But yeah, their pathway becomes a little bit more clearer on Monday once they find out who they'll be drawn against.
Yeah, there was a couple of shocks last night in the second qualifying round that, Paphos knocked out Maccabi Tel Aviv of Israel, who were actually the highest ranked unseeded side left in the draw at that point. So that was something of a shock. And Skandia knocked out Steaua Bucharest as well. So it shows that teams, even though they might have a lower coefficient, they're obviously going to be incredibly motivated at this stage of the competition, especially if they get through the third qualifying round as well and have gone on a wee run by the time Celtic face them. Danger lurks here, and Celtic really need to be on the ball. We've been hammering this home for months now, but as the draw approaches and the calibre of team we're up against, there's nobody there I think Celtic should fear. I mean, if you put value into the UEFA coefficient, or you use that to guide the quality of a team, then actually the highest ranked unseeded team left that Celtic could face is Slovan Bratislava, and obviously Celtic comfortably beat Slovan Bratislava in last year's Champions League phase. That doesn't mean that they'll do so again, but it just shows you that Celtic should have, ideally, if Celtic are playing at their peak and have got their squad in the right place, they should be able to take care of most of these teams and book their place in that 36-team league phase, which is so lucrative and exciting for supporters.
Yeah, that's if they get the business done from between now and that registration phase, which I believe is around the 14th of August, is when they can stop registering players for this upcoming tie. So the countdown's really on. Celtic have basically got 2 weeks to strengthen their squad ahead of the tie. There's a couple of really, really tricky ties there. You look at Dynamo Kiev as well. They're a team that put out Rangers last season, and round about I think it was the round before, but they put out Rangers of the Champions League qualifying last season. Yeah, it's all about strengthening and being as strong as you can for this upcoming game. But regardless of who they play, there'll be nerves attached to it, because it's a knockout tie in the Champions League. To get into the Champions League And yeah, it's a big occasion regardless of who they play. The stakes are very high. It's up to Celtic to be prepared for whoever they face come next month.
It's as I said, the draw is on Monday, so we'll find out then. And then the first leg is either on the 19th or 20th of August, and the second leg is a week later. Now, Celtic are seeded, but that doesn't guarantee that they'll be at home in the second leg, which can be seen as a bit of an advantage. The home and away order is determined by who is drawn out of the pot first on Monday. So if Celtic are drawn out of the pot first and they're pairing, they'll be at home first. If they're drawn out second, they'll be away first. And that's how that will be determined. I think that's all the information we have on that. And as I say, yeah, it's been a bit, obviously we've known for quite a while that Celtic were going to be seeded, but there was been various permutations of various teams that Celtic could face, but that's a solid 8. All 8 of those teams will be in the draw, so it's a healthy update to kind of get your head around the quality of opposition that Celtic will be facing. Ryan, the other news kind of since we last did the briefing is that Celtic are going to be signing Jahmai Simpson-Pusey from Manchester City, young teenage defender, central defender. Celtic are said to have agreed a loan deal for the season. There's no option to buy, there's no obligation to buy. This is a straight loan deal for a talented player who was the Premier League 2 Player of the Year last year, I believe. Interesting that Celtic are going to have Callum Osmond, who was nominated for that award, and then Jahmai Simpson-Pusey, who won that award, both in the squad for the coming season. Now, you spoke to one of the Manchester Evening News reporters, I believe, Simon Bajkowski. I think he's like the preeminent Manchester City reporter down there. So you tapped him up to get a sense of what Celtic are getting in Simpson-Pusey, because I think because of his age, he's not played much. He's only made a handful of appearances for Manchester City. Youth football is hard to get a grasp on the quality of a player. So you spoke to him extensively yesterday. What did you find out about him? I'm going to post a link in the chat for people to read this if they want to later while Ryan speaks.
Yeah, quite enthused about this signing after speaking to Simon at length yesterday. It was an interesting and detailed conversation that the pair of us had about Simpson-Pusey. Very young player, 19 years old, but extremely highly rated down south in the youth setup, which is obviously displayed with that Premier League 2 Player of the Year. Simon was actually telling me about some of the past recipients of that award, likes of Liam Delap, Cole Palmer, Phil Foden as well, I believe. Not to put them in the same bracket, but those players did win that award as well. So Man City, and I think that also tells you, because all of those players that I named came through the Man City Youth Academy as well. So it's a really, really strong system for these players to come through the EDS, the Elite Development Squad, that Celtic have actually benefited from in the past with the likes of Patrick Roberts, Jason Denayer, Dedrick Boyata to a lesser extent, although he was in the first team at that point. So yeah, by all accounts, he seems like a pretty exciting young signing for Celtic to develop, a guy that's ready, or it seems to be ready for first team football. That was one of the things that Simon said. He's kind of outgrown academy football, as shown by his accolades at the end of the season. He took the captaincy for the under-21s team, made 6 appearances for Manchester City's senior squad last season, and looked pretty good in all of his appearances, despite what was happening around him. Now, if you know anything about what happened to Man City last season, he had a 4 or 5 month spell where the wheels came off completely under Pep Guardiola and he was chopping and changing the team. But when Simpson-Pusey came into the side, he seemed to deal with the pressure, and it seemed to be that everybody else around him was panicking about what was going on. They eventually finished third, but for them that was a bit of a disastrous season. So good on the ball, good on the air is what Simon told me as well. 6'2". Yeah, it looks like a pretty exciting signing for Celtic, and someone that can immediately take a first team place, you would hope.
I mean, you say it's exciting, but I'm just going to throw a comment in here. I'm just going to throw it like a grenade because I think it's actually a decent point, to be honest, Ryan. Danny Boy asking, if there's no option to buy, what's the point? Like, what is the point of Celtic developing another team's player? No option to buy, no path to making this guy permanent, no kind of value in profit down the line. For me, from the outside looking in, it raises more questions than answers for me. He might provide an answer in a defensive sense for the season, but it raises questions, and it feels like almost a regression of where Celtic were 10 years ago. You know, like I just feel like Celtic have utilised loans very, very usefully over the last 5 years or so, but generally loans have some sort of option or some sort of pathway to Celtic making that move permanent, and it's a little bit it's not ideal for me that there's no option to buy this guy.
For me, the ideal world would be if there was, if Manchester City rate this player so high, then include an option to buy, but a buyback clause, which is what City have been doing for numerous players over the past couple of years. But then you could look at it on the other side. The fact that they're not putting an option to buy on the player would suggest that they do see a long-term future for him at Manchester City. And if he's a centre-back that's good enough in the future to get into City's first team, then you would expect him to be good enough to come into Celtic's defence right now and shore up the defence alongside Cameron Carter-Vickers. That was another thing that he was talking about. Despite him being right-footed, he's more than comfortable playing on the left-hand side alongside Carter-Vickers. So that should work between the two of them. I can see why people would be annoyed at the fact that there's no option to buy. I've got to be honest, when I first heard of the rumour or the link between Celtic and Manchester City for Simpson-Pusey, and I was like, why is there no option to buy? How does this benefit Celtic? But if he's better than what Celtic have got at this moment in time, which we don't know yet, but the signs and the murmurings coming out of Manchester City is that this guy is ready for first team football, then that's got to be an improvement, whether it's an option to buy or not. And I just want to see the defence shored up, to be honest with you.
Henrik McLarson's saying, I don't mind no option to buy. It serves a temporary purpose that we can answer down the line. It's a sticking plaster, but so be it. I understand that point of view. I guess the sense of, like, if there was an option to buy in this, it would be so expensive that Celtic wouldn't be able to afford it anyway. So there is an element of that. If the feeling is Simpson-Pusey can come in and perform a substantial role over the course of the season, then there is temporary upside to it. I have to be honest, I don't think this guy is coming to Celtic to sit on the bench, and then that throws an interesting dynamic for the rest of the defensive lineup at Celtic this summer. I think there's moving parts here that are unseen, that Celtic are either got in the works and planning or are potential movement for various players down the line. Now, who that could be, we don't know at this point, frankly. But I don't think the defensive lineup at Celtic, as it stands now, is going to be the defensive lineup as at the end of the transfer window. So I think this might be part of that, and I guess we'll see where it goes. I think the kind of report from Simon you got, he's right-footed, but he's comfortable playing on the left side of defence as well. So he could be a partner for Carter-Vickers rather than a straight backup for him. And it seems, just looking at the deal, looking at what because Man City aren't going to send this guy to Celtic just to sit on the bench every week. It seems like he's eyed for a partner, a partner for Carter-Vickers rather than someone who's a backup.
I think that's got to be the aim. Whoever's coming in is going to play alongside Cameron Carter-Vickers, because when he's fit, he will play for Celtic. He's Celtic's best defender by a country mile, and it was either Liam Scales or Austin Trusty that were beside him. Obviously, Carter-Vickers can sometimes get knocks throughout the season. Then you'll need to bring in somebody like Scales or Trusty to potentially play alongside Simpson-Pusey. But in an ideal world, for those Champions League games, for the big games against better opposition in the Scottish Premiership, you're hoping that it can be Carter-Vickers and Simpson-Pusey. Because I do agree with you, like, Man City won't be sending a player unless they have at least a little bit of a guarantee that he's going to be getting some game time. They really value loans for their loan players. They value the destination where they're going. That's what Simon was telling me as well. They have a keen eye on where they send their players and if it's the best fit for him to go and play first team football. So Brendan Rodgers obviously has a gauge of how the player is. He actually came up against him last season. He played in America against Celtic in the 4-3 game. I went back to watch some of the clips. It was mostly down the other side, actually, that had some problems with Nicholas Kuhn. Simpson-Pusey wasn't really involved in the concession of any of the goals in the first half. But he does seem to have good recovery pace, good on the ball. And if he can settle in quickly, then I don't see why this can't be a good signing for Celtic down the line, at least for this season.
You're fighting against a tide in the chat today, Ryan. There's a lot of cynicism around this deal, and I think that's fair. I've got a comment from Mark Fairfield here. John, what does Dane Murray think? Shunted out again when he was very impressive pre-season. I'll address that. So, look, if you look at it as... I don't think Dane Murray was ever going to be a starter at Celtic this season. If you look at maybe Dane Murray as the backup to Carter-Vickers, Simpson-Pusey's maybe on the left, and then it's either Scales or Trusty in backup or competing with Simpson-Pusey for that left-sided slot, then that starts to make a little bit of sense. But again, there's moving parts here, and it feels like at least one player has to either go out on loan or leave Celtic for this to work, because I think 4 centre-backs is probably the sweet spot for what you need, 5 at the most. And I guess with Dane Murray, certainly if he's not going to be an initial backup for one of these players, then I do think a Premiership loan is the best thing for Dane Murray at this point. He had his comeback loan at Queen's Park last season, and if he could step up and perform regularly in the Scottish Premiership, that would be progress. But if he can be a direct backup to Carter Vickers, I feel, and if he's not third or fourth down the line, then I think Dane Murray could be kept in a squad role this season. But I agree, the perception of it isn't great, where we've got a younger player that Brendan Rodgers says he rates and he likes the attributes of, likes the mentality of, likes the personality of, and then we're signing another club's development player on loan to potentially be a starter at Celtic. The perception of it doesn't look great from the outside.
It doesn't, but if there's any academy that I would want to be taking young players from, just looking at the dynamic of football nowadays and all the amount of senior players that go from Manchester City's academy to first team football, not just in England but abroad. You look at the Netherlands, you look at Germany, look at France, etc., etc. Then it's the Manchester City academy. There's so many first team, there's so many players that then make senior football because of the way that they're developed under good coaches at under 19 and under 21 level. People still talk about how good Jason Denayer was at Celtic 10, 11 years ago, and people are going to make that comparison between him and Simpson-Pusey when he comes through the door. I just think this is a move that could benefit all parties, and just because there isn't an option to buy on the player now doesn't mean that can't be the case down the line, and that the two sides can agree a deal. I'm positive about it because I just don't see the point in being negative about it until we've actually seen the player in person.
I don't think it's about the player, is it? It's not about the player. It's about what Celtic's strategy is. Is there a strategy here? For me, the Simpson-Pusey one, it raises more questions than answers, frankly. And it's not about the player. It's not about what he'll offer Celtic. I've no doubt that he's got talent, and Celtic see something they like in him. I'm just thinking about Celtic's overall place in the market and how they're operating. It just doesn't feel ideal to me, and I understand why there's cynicism around it. But listen, as you say, from a purely playing perspective, from the player himself, there is optimism there, because I do think he looks like a highly rated talent, and as you said, Simon had a glowing reports from both in terms of his ability. Obviously fits very well into the Man City system, has that ball playing ability under Guardiola. Guardiola likes him. Guardiola's been on the record and saying he can be like someone for the future for Man City. And I think his mentality and his attitude is right as well, by all accounts. Simon has interviewed him a lot, I think, over the last couple of years, and says he's very mature for his age and kind of has a calmness and composure that you need at that top level too.
The word that I liked is that he's unfazed, and that's both on the pitch and off the pitch. He showed that he was unfazed on the pitch when he came in, to the Lions. Then basically at Sporting Club's Ruben Amorim's final game. I know it ended up 4-1 to Sporting Club. That was Ruben Amorim's final game before he joined Manchester United. But by all accounts, he did himself proud in a really difficult stadium and a difficult environment to play in. So he's unfazed, but he's also a bit of a leader on the pitch, but off the pitch he's unfazed as well. I know I've said unfazed about 20 times in the past minute there, but I like when somebody says that about a defender, because it's a completely different loan spell for him coming to Celtic rather than playing in the Championship or League One or maybe even a different team abroad. There's an expectancy for him to win football matches as a Celtic player when he comes through that door. And I think that benefits both parties. And if he's unfazed about playing for Man City, coming in, from the cold, from the elite development squad, then he sounds as if he's got the temperament to play for Celtic as well. And yeah, I just think the past dealings between the two sides have been pretty good on the whole. Daniel Arzani didn't work because there was an injury 10-15 minutes into his debut, but apart from that, Celtic and Manchester City has been a pretty good partnership in terms of loan players and permanent players. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this one progresses. And yeah, as much as I would want it to be a permanent player coming in, and Celtic can build a player for the next 2-3 years, I just feel with the Champions League coming up, with the qualifiers coming up, that you can't really be picky anymore, unfortunately. In an ideal world, I would want it to be a permanent player, but I'm willing to give this player an opportunity to come in and really make that position his own, and fingers crossed he does.
A comment from X here. Very odd. Sentiment seems to be we should play lower quality players this season just because we can't buy him. Bash our loan in the next Jahmai, will we knock him back if no option to buy and focus on developing young Tilio? Listen, there's a variety of viewpoints out there. I understand why people will be optimistic about what this guy can bring in the short term, and that's fine. If he's here to do a short-term job for Celtic and he's successful in that endeavour and he picks up a Player of the Season award, then we'll all be going, that was a great move in the short term. Long term, I think we've got issues around the defence, and we'll see how it plays out. I'm obviously going to keep an open mind on it and I hope that he fits in well at Celtic. As I say, I hope he's coming to Celtic to be a starter. That's the kind of signing that we need, someone who can come in and help strengthen what Celtic already have in place. So I guess we keep an open mind and see how it plays out, Ryan. Potentially Stephen Welsh going out in the other direction. I think it's become clear Stephen Welsh doesn't have much of a future at Celtic. That became apparent last season. Even Dane Murray's ahead of him in the pecking order now, Ryan. He's had consistent shoulder issues. I think Plymouth Argyle are the team looking to take him on loan with a potential option in that. And Stephen Welsh has actually played more games than most academy graduates over the last few years. I don't know if that says more about the academy or Stephen Welsh, but it looks like he'll be moving on from Celtic this summer.
Yeah, and I think that if that move is to transpire for Stephen Welsh, then I think it'll be a really good move for him, not just for the initial moving to League One, but the actual showcase that he can showcase his abilities in League One if he gets proper game time, because then that'll be broadcast to the other League One teams and potentially Championship teams as well. I think he's got to be looking for his next permanent move as well. I agree with you. I think his future lies elsewhere away from Celtic, despite him playing 60-65 games for the first team in 4 or 5 years, which, you know, is an achievement in itself. He's came from the academy to play first team football, but it's clear that his future lies elsewhere. So if he can get game time at Plymouth, if that's to be the club that he goes to, puts in good performances, then I've got no doubt that he can carve out a career for himself down south. I look at, you know, likes of Owen O'Connell that plays for Wrexham. He had that move down south. He went to Charlton. He showed himself, and then he's that's the thing. If you do well in League One or the Championship, then you tend to get moves to different clubs if you play well. So yeah, good luck to him if he gets that move, and I think it could be a good one and a beneficial one for his long-term future away from Celtic.
There's various other transfer stories in the round, but nothing tangible from a Celtic perspective. There's a lot of noise around Jacob Braham at the moment from Go Ahead Eagles. Now, the last we reported on that was that Celtic had made 3 bids for the player this summer. There's no update on that. The rest of it is just noise around valuations and exit clauses and etc. with the bids from other teams. But from a purely Celtic's perspective, I don't think there's anything new on that at the moment, which is why we're not really talking about it. The noise is the noise, and the outrage is the outrage. But it seems that for now Celtic have not gone back to kind of follow up the Braham interest. So I guess, again, it's another one we'll wait and see. Celtic do need wingers, of course. They do need attackers. Brendan Rodgers was speaking yesterday. There was a bit of a media day yesterday on Sky Sports News where they were travelling around. Well, it's actually been happening all week. Sky Sports News have been travelling around a lot of the training grounds in Scotland across the Premiership for the kick-off this weekend. They were at Lennoxtown yesterday. They spoke to Callum Osman. They spoke to Benjamin Egan. And they also spoke to Brendan Rodgers. Now, Brendan Rodgers was obviously asked about transfers because that's all he seems to be asked about at the moment. And on that, he said, we hope this week that there will be some news on that. With regards to new arrivals. However, I think that coaches in the transfer market don't move at the same pace. A coach always wants a player in immediately, but the market doesn't always work like that. There's a lot that goes into it. This is the reason for pre-season. You want the team together as quickly as you can so you can get good work in and the spirit formed. We know that traditionally it can be a challenge. A coach will always want the players in. I think it's arithmetic. It is purely counting because we've lost players and we want to replace those players with quality. It's not an opinion, it's where it's at. I'm very hopeful that we can do that. For me, the focus is very much on who is here. We know we have work to do. I'm hopeful we can get that done by the end of the window. Now, not particularly newsworthy comments Ryan, it's kind of very similar to what Brendan Rodgers has been saying for a while. It seems he's in the waiting game on this stuff as much as supporters, which, you can read your own thoughts into, I suppose.
Yeah, he's definitely more measured with these comments than he was in his first spell. That's for sure. He can hold it back. He's still conveying that message that reinforcements are needed, additions are needed to the squad, but he's going about it in a bit more of a measured way than he did the first time around, which,
I think he was measured another way. I think people sometimes read, he did mention the ambition word, and I do get that was a red flag for some people, but I think Brendan Rodgers has actually been pretty calm throughout the summer. It's other people around who are kind of either projecting stuff onto what Rodgers is saying or reading between the lines. And again, speculation is natural, but I would say Rodgers himself has been pretty calm for throughout the summer.
Yeah, calm, measured. He's not really get too high or too low with the signings or lack of signings, which is important, I think, because what he conveys to the media can then go to the support, and the support can get a little bit restless. They're restless anyway, to be honest, because there's players that have left the club and replacements so far are not there, and they're not there for the Champions League qualifier as we speak, which is why there's a little bit of worry and trepidation and anxiety towards the Champions League qualifiers. Not to say there wouldn't be anyway. I think there would be, because it's a knockout game, as I said earlier, and there will be nervousness attached to that. But yeah, I feel like there's more so because the positions are that obvious. You've lost Nicholas Kuhn, who was double digits in goals and assists last season. You've not brought in a player. Then you hear that Tellio's not leaving the club because a replacement for Nicholas Kuhn hasn't arrived yet. So there is that worry. But Brendan Rodgers went about it, I think, the right way yesterday. He made his point clear, but he didn't go overboard with it, and I think that's pretty good.
Should he be firmer? Should he be more like Ange, bringing down the fire? Should there be a bit more of that kind of chat? Does that serve Celtic well? Does it push Celtic into action, or is that just people looking for drama where it doesn't need to exist?
To be honest, I think it's the latter. Yeah, I think that's drama that I want the business to be done in the background. As much as you want to hear Brendan Rodgers being passionate about bringing players in and saying that he demands this and that, you want the relationship between the hierarchy and Brendan Rodgers to be as fluid and positive as possible. So a good way to do that is not by having outbursts in the media, and he's not really had that. I mean, in his first
he's
spell,
not had that at all, I would say.
No, but the second time he's been so much more calmer with the media. I think he's mature. I feel bad saying matured as a manager, but he's got more experience. He was down at Leicester, he's back at Celtic. He knows how to deal with it, and he knows how the club works with transfers as well. I'm sure there's work getting done in the background. I think it's just the speed of it that's maybe irking him ever so slightly. But he's not letting that show in the public domain in interviews, which I think is important as well. But I think we all want the same thing. We all want signings to be made. We all want the team to be strengthened. But I'm happy with the way that he's going about things just now, making his point, but not making it too firm that it could cause strife above him.
Now, Stephen Welsh leaves. He joins a list of how should I put it, kind of squad fluff, shall we say, that was kind of hanging around that kind of did need moved on.
Yeah.
Hyuk Kyung Kwon has joined Nantes. Adam Montgomery has gone to Livingston. Luis Palma has gone to Lech Poznan. Gustav Lagerberg has gone to Braga. Mike Norowski has gone to Hanover. Scott Bain's gone to Falkirk. These were all players who were not getting game time at Celtic, and arguably Celtic are better primed to do business now that they're gone rather than keeping them around. So I guess that is one of probably the unspoken kind of positives, but in terms of numbers, when Brendan Rodgers saying there it's about arithmetic, he's right, because you add Greg Taylor to that, you add Nicholas Kuhn to that, you add Kyogo to that from January, then there's also quality that's left the group as well, and it's that quality that needs replaced. Everyone knows this, it's all ground at the moment, but Brendan Rodgers also waiting for the transfer deals that supporters want,
Yeah, absolutely, and I do think they've done a good job in getting some of that squad fluff, as you call it, out of the build. I'm gonna use that. I think that's a lot nicer than some of the other
ones. Saying stop being nice, squad fluff. Yeah, that was perhaps been a little bit nice. Look, I never like to be unkind about Celtic players, to be honest.
No, because they're representing the club, and you want them to do well when they're representing the club, and you want them to leave if they are to leave, and for the best possible move. If that, you don't want them hanging about, is basically what I'm trying to say. So I think squad fluff is a nicer term than other terms that could be used towards the players. But I think they've done a pretty good job in doing that. The likes of Palma, that wasn't going to make an impact. It seems as if Brendan Rodgers made his mind up about him last season. So moving him out on loan to Lech Poznan with an option to buy, getting rid of Gustav Lagerbielke on a permanent, Mike Nawrowski, getting him a loan deal that could potentially turn into a permanent deal. I think that's good work from the club in terms of getting the players away. It's also good work getting the money for Nicholas Kuhn, but we need to see the incomings as well. We had that initial phase at the start where Benjamin Negan came in. By all accounts, he looks like a first-team player that can really impact this season. Getting Kieran Tierney back is a positive. Ross Doohan for the Champions League squad as well as third choice. These are all good bits of business, but we need to see the first team quality come through the door now, the ones that can impact Celtic right now going into the qualifiers, and then as we get to the season that can be first team players for Celtic and really be the difference for Celtic.
Yeah, Brown Warrior saying Celtic cleared the deck. That's what was required to see where we are.
Absolutely.
In regards to what we need. Taylor has been replaced. Kyogo has been replaced. Now, the jury's out on that. It depends on what Yamada is all about. Now we need Kuhn and Palma's replacements, which is very accurate. I think
especially Kuhn, I would say. Especially Kuhn.
Yeah, obviously. It's, as Brendan Rodgers said, goals out the team. Now Celtic scored an incredible amount of goals last season, but you're taking Kyogo, you're taking Kuhn, those goals need to be replaced somehow. And the season starts this weekend, which is exciting. I know you're going along to Celtic Park. You'll be covering the game for us on Sunday, Ryan. Yeah. How are you feeling about that, the St Mirren challenge, and getting back to Celtic Park?
Taking away the slight annoyance with the way that the transfer window has been this past month, I'm really excited for the season starting for Celtic. It's been a long summer without them. Even with the pre-season games, they don't quite scratch that itch that you've got for regular football, regular senior competitive football. So Sunday will come along and Sunday will take care of itself, despite the rumblings of a little bit of discontent in the crowd at Celtic Park on Sunday. I think once that flag's raised and kick-off begins, then everybody just goes back into that mode for the season. It's all about a new season for Celtic. Everybody's got that one goal of getting success at the end of the season. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to taking my seat and being a part of it for the next campaign. Yeah, it's despite that annoyance of the transfer window, I'm excited for what the season can bring, both domestically and in Europe.
Tony had Yamada in his starting 11 for Sunday, Ryan. Are you putting Yamada in as well, or are you just going with Ida? Or what do you think? Well, first of all, what would you prefer to see, and what do you think Rodgers will do?
I mean, I would like to see Rodgers spring a surprise and put Yamada through the middle. I think that would cause quite a bit of excitement amongst people heading to the game to see their striker, a new striker that's only been in the door a couple of weeks, be in the starting lineup. Although I think it will be Adam Ida, because Celtic have paid a lot of money for him. They're expecting big things from him this season. Rodgers is probably expecting big things from him to knuckle down and get more goals. I know he got 20 goals last season, but you'd expect him to get more this season now that he's fully settled, had a full pre-season to work at his game. So I think it will be Adam Ida, but there's that option now to come off the bench and Shin Yamada. He's now fully registered and he's ready to go if called upon. You've also got the line. You've got the option for Daisen Maeda, who's more than equipped to play down the middle if required. But I'm looking forward to seeing how that relationship can develop between potentially Shin Yamada and Daisen Maeda in the side. I think that could be a bit of a pressing machine for Celtic, particularly in Europe this season.
I think we will, of course, have Kieran Tierney in the team, and I think we'll have Benjamin Negan in the team as well.
Me too.
So there'll be excitement there, new players there in a competitive game for Celtic. And pre-season's finally done. I'm not a huge fan of pre-season matches, Ryan. I think too much can be read into it sometimes, or not enough. It just seems it's a weird one. The games are strange. The competitive stuff is what it's all about, and I'm really glad to be getting Celtic back this weekend. We'll have Josh on the show tomorrow. We're going to be looking really in depth at squad depth, comparing it to last year, etc. We'll be doing all that on tomorrow's show. We've got a chat with Simon Donnelly coming up as well, and we also have a St Mirren preview with a St Mirren, someone who covers St Mirren, a journalist who covers St Mirren on a regular basis, to give a bit of insight into how St Mirren's summer's going and how their season is panning out. We're going to be trying to do that with most of the opposition teams. Certainly before the first time Celtic play them this season, by the time we get into the second or third games against them, I don't think we need a preview video for every opponent, but it'll be good to find out how St Mirren are feeling going into this new season. But thanks for joining us in the live chat. Thanks for joining me, Ryan. Thanks for joining us in the comments below. If you're leaving a comment, let us know what you think of the Jahmai Simpson-Pusey deal, the loan deal. I know we had a bit of conflicting opinions on that today. There's certainly conflicting opinions in the chat. Some people are enthused by it, some people are a bit cynical about it, and I think both, as always, both viewpoints have an element of fairness to them. So let us know what you think of that loan move, which we think will go through. It looks like that is one that seems imminent. And on the website, if you want to read more about Jahmai Simpson-Pusey, as I say, that's live on the website right now at the top. It's £1 for a 6-month subscription. Very cheap entry. You get 6 months. You'll get lots more articles to come, not just that one. And as I say, Simon Bajkowski, he's like he's the go-to guy for reporting on Man City. So he knows his stuff on Man City, and he gave us really good insight on Simpson-Pusey. So if you fancy that, fancy finding all about a bit more about the incoming defender, then please do that. But we'll say goodbye for now. We'll be back tomorrow on the morning briefing, chatting lots more about Celtic. Goodbye, Ryan.
Cheers, guys. Thank